Tonight, nearly 4 dozen recommendations for Prince Albert Police after an independent review of the service that followed 3 in-custody deaths and internal strife. Also, a special project at the University of Regina will document tens of thousands of plant samples for the world to see. Plus, the Roughriders will likely be without their highest-paid player and starting quarterback for the season after a serious on-field injury.
This is CBC Saskatchewan News.
It is Tuesday, July 18th, and the CBC Saskatchewan News starts right now. Good evening and thanks for joining us. An independent review into the Prince Albert Police Service has produced 45 recommendations. The Saskatchewan government released the list of recommendations this morning, but not the full report. Nicholas Frew has more.
Police and government officials say work is being done to implement several dozen recommendations to improve the Prince Albert Police Service. Christine Tell, Minister of Corrections, Policing and Public Safety, ordered an independent review into the service last fall. It came in response to 3 in-custody deaths in 2021 and the death of 13-month-old Tanner Brass in 2022. The conduct of the Prince Albert Police has come into further question since then, as Saskatchewan's Serious Incident Response Team investigates 2 separate incidents where police action killed 2 men. Former Edmonton Police Chief Rod Knecht conducted the review and submitted his report to Tell this spring. He made 45 recommendations. In a news release, Tell said the government is working with the Prince Albert Police, the Board of Police Commissioners, and the local police union to implement the recommendations. She says the hope is that the people of Prince Albert, quote, can be confident in the service's ability to keep them and their community safe, end quote. The suggestions are mainly administrative and policy-oriented, like bolstering the Criminal Investigation Division to address serious crimes other than homicides. But one of the recommendations suggests former police chief John Bergen, who resigned in May, never received an annual performance assessment as required. In a statement, Interim Police Chief Patrick Nogier said the service is committed to reviewing and implementing the recommendations. He acknowledged the recommendations will, quote, have a significant impact on our operations and financial management, end quote. But he says the service is determined to, quote, rise to the challenge and implement change effectively and efficiently, end quote. The Prince Albert Board of Police Commissioners said it has already implemented some of the recommendations, but it is continuing work on others. Nicholas Frew, CBC News, Regina.
The federal government is giving about $1.4 million over 5 years to the Yorkton Tribal Council to support its community-based justice initiatives. The YTC provides services for 6 Saskatchewan First Nations. The federal dollars help pay for community-based programs for young people in conflict with the law, including crime prevention workshops to correctional programs and victim offender mediations. The YTC tribal chief says consistent progress with justice outreach in the communities will result in fewer Indigenous people being incarcerated.
Our overall goal is to really try and teach our young people, teach our people, to have make different choices, and if they do make the wrong choice, then there's always measures within our that can help them to steer away from a criminal record.
Osoup says that those struggling with the law or looking for supportive programming need to reach out to tribal councils for help. She says YTC justice programs are ready to help the surrounding communities, but people need to take the first step and ask for help. The RCMP brought the musical ride to Bernard Constant Community School grounds at James Smith Cree Nation today. Chief Wally Byrne says the RCMP reached out to the First Nation to hold the performance.
For me and my nation, I think it was a blessing in disguise because our people are still grieving due to their losses, and I think this really opened a lot of eyes because it never happened in James Smith, or our people never seen this fabulous ride. You know that?
The performance received much applause as officers rode their horses, sitting in bleachers and in lawn chairs, holding on to umbrellas or even the chairs in the heavy rain. Community members enjoyed the show with big smiles. The rain didn't dampen any enthusiasm. Byrne says it opened many eyes.
In the past, the RCMP weren't present in our community for, I don't know, X number of days. And even though if we call them, you know, it'll take probably an hour or two for them to respond. So I think this really opens the eyes of our community. The response time is a lot better, and I think the communications with the RCMP are a lot better with us, our First Nation, and with them too.
Burns says police response time has improved since September 4th. That's when a mass stabbing left 11 people dead and injured 18 others in the community east of Prince Albert. He says the goal of James Smith having its own policing is still under consideration. He's hopeful their proposal will go through when Parliament resumes in the fall. This wildfire season has affected millions of Canadians, including here in Saskatchewan, with plenty of concerns about the risks from wildfire smoke. BC has now issued a public safety bulletin after a 9-year-old boy died of an asthma attack. Tanya Fletcher has more.
Carter Vi was like many other 9-year-olds. He loved music and soccer, says his mom.
He loved his family so hard.
Last week, Carter was playing outside in the morning and seemed fine. His parents say the wildfire smoke worsened as the day went on. Given his asthma, they monitored him closely. By dinner time, he was coughing uncontrollably. That's when they rushed him to the hospital in 100 Mile House.
When I carried him out from the house to the truck, he kind of looked up at me and he's like, "Oh man," he's like, "I don't like the feeling of this."
Inside the ER, they describe an army of staff performing CPR for 25 minutes. It wasn't enough. Carter died at 7:20 that night.
This is obviously a terrible, terrible tragedy and every parent's worst nightmare.
BC's coroner confirms wildfire smoke was a factor in Carter's death. This case has now sparked a provincial safety bulletin warning of the dangers of wildfire smoke.
When it comes to air quality, it is monitored on a daily basis, and that I think people need to pay attention to that.
Oh, it's far more common than we think.
In fact, this respirologist says 1 in 4 patients he sees during wildfire season is related to air pollution.
We know wildfires can trigger asthma attacks.
And experts only expect more cases linked to air quality in the future.
We have levels in northern BC in particular that are about 40 times higher than what the World Health Organization recommends. So we're starting to understand a lot more about this, but this is, as Jess, just the tip of the iceberg.
The advice from doctors, if you have breathing problems, stay inside as much as possible.
I'm hoping that people realize how quickly it can turn, because we had his asthma under control. We were so diligent.
And yet a family, an entire community is left to mourn a little boy whose smile lit up a room. Tanya Fletcher, CBC News, Vancouver.
Saskatchewan livestock producers are in need of some serious financial help. That's the message from the province to the federal government. The Ministry of Agriculture sent a request to the feds this week asking for what's called an agri-recovery assessment. It's disaster relief framework that helps producers facing things like feed shortages as drought conditions continue. Meanwhile, you might have already noticed the impact at the grocery store. Experts say the price of beef, cuts like steak and tenderloin, has risen by 25% in the last month.
The ranchers tend to get rid of inventory when feed costs go up. It's always the same thing. So they'll see exactly what is the optimal time for them to actually get rid of their stock. And so that's kind of what happened in the spring and summer. So we were expecting, and futures were way up for a very long time. And so that tends to really give us an idea that a few months later, retail prices would be impacted. And that's exactly what's going on right now.
Charlebois says the last time beef prices were driven up by drought was in 2014, and it took about a year for them to bounce back down. The Saskatchewan Roughriders will likely be without their highest paid player and starting quarterback Trevor Harris for the season. Harris had surgery to repair a fractured right knee. The spotlight in Rider Nation will now be on the new starter, Mason Fine. Adam Hunter has the details.
26-year-old Mason Fine took the first team reps at quarterback for the Roughriders at practice today. The third-year Rider says he's ready for the #1 job.
You don't get very many opportunities, so you got to make the most of it. But again, you got to have the balance of not trying to do too much and putting that pressure on yourself. And I know those guys in that locker room believe in me, and I just got to go out there and play my game. And I'm excited for the opportunity. I really am. And I think I'm going into this week with the right mindset.
Fine was thrust into action on Saturday after starter Trevor Harris was carted off the field. He led 2 touchdown drives, including a miraculous 3rd and 24 conversion to Tevin Jones with under a minute left.
Honestly, it's a lot of luck on that touchdown pass. I'm not going to lie. So that's not something much of me being a great coach. It was really just even it up for a Hail Mary really was what it was. But yeah, you build off that. But I think you learn from the highs and the lows of that game, and you try to what can we take away from that game and put that into this week.
Head coach Craig Dickinson says Fine earned the starter's job.
We're confident in Mason, absolutely, and we're looking forward to seeing him play. But if Trevor was healthy, he'd be Trevor. So the reason Mason's playing is our starter got hurt, and we expect Mason to come in and do what he's shown in practice and make strides, as the game goes along and give us a chance to win.
As for the injury to Harris, GM Jeremy O'Day provided this update.
Well, it's definitely going to be a long term. I think it's it wasn't a situation after talking to the medical staff that they wanted to rule him out for the entire season, but it's going to be a long term. He'll be pretty much non-weight bearing for about 6 weeks.
O'Day says the club has confidence in Fine, who was twice Oklahoma High School Player of the Year and twice Conference MVP while at North Texas. And he says the club doesn't plan on bringing in another quarterback at this time. Will stick with backups Shea Patterson and Jake Dolagala. Adam Hunter, CBC News, Regina.
Oh, quite the light show in Regina last night. Storms rolled through the city around 11:30, and no, the power grid, it did not survive. Power was out for close to 2 hours in some parts of the city. Unsettled weather is happening in our province again today. Ethan will have all the details in his forecast after the break. Stay with us. There's a small room at the University of Regina where you can find tens of thousands of plant species. But these plants aren't alive. In fact, some of them are very old. Ethan Williams takes us to the university's herbarium, where a special project is underway to show off its plant samples to the world.
Mel Hart spends a lot of time around these cabinets in the U of R's laboratory building, combing through more than 70,000 dried plant specimens in this herbarium, a place where plants are studied and cataloged. It's a relatively unknown part of the university, but soon that will change. It's thanks to a project that started in 2018 when Hart and her colleagues planned to clean up the space.
COVID hit, put everything on hold, and then as we were coming out of the pandemic, saw the opportunity to employ students and really showcase the collection by getting it digitized and putting it online.
Over the next few years, these specimens will go from the page to the Global Biodiversity Information Facility, a free website that makes biodiversity data available to the world.
I was wondering if you wanted to.
Research assistants will have to scan each and every page to digitize the specimens.
There's at least 100 years of Saskatchewan's ecosystem in here, and it'll tell you when these plants were around and how they've developed since then and how little or how much they're thriving as a result. And it's really just been fun to try to reconnect a part of this history to Saskatchewan.
And that history also includes documenting and digitizing the life of the man behind the herbarium. George F. Ledingham founded it in 1945 while teaching at what was then the Regina campus of the University of Saskatchewan. He retired in 1978, but continued working in the herbarium until his death in 2006 at the age of 95. That's where Mariko Sawa comes in, a history student tasked with preserving Ledingham's legacy. She combs through countless notes, journals, and correspondences Ledingham penned over the decades.
One of the fun things for me when I was going through his book and transcribing it and finding names and thinking, oh God, I can't read that name, but I need to put the real name into my transcription, and going down this rabbit hole of finding every single professor he's ever worked with all over the world.
There's still about 50,000 specimens left to catalog and many letters left to read, but this small team is hoping to make a big impact on the world of biology, all under a watchful eye, of course. Ethan Williams, CBC News, Regina.
This weather update is brought to you by Titan Automotive, proud member of the Capital Automotive Group.
And Ethan joins me now. A lot of plants very happy and people very happy for the rain that we've received.
Oh, yeah, it's been a long time coming for especially central Saskatchewan, where we are seeing that rain today. Let's take a look now at where that is on radar. This very Milky Way galaxy-looking low-pressure system swirling around counterclockwise, centered basically right over Saskatoon, and those heavier bands of rain. You saw it earlier on the James Smith Cree Nation there and through the Prince Albert area and a little bit west of Saskatoon. Also producing a bit of severe weather on the front edge of it as well. We have severe thunderstorm warnings in effect for the RMs of Mooseman and Calder for a couple of cells that are now beginning to move out, but some larger hail and strong winds associated. We also have a severe thunderstorm watch in effect for the Yorkton, Melville and Esterhazy area. On the backside of that system, it's the wind. We had a gust today in swift current of nearly 90 kilometers an hour. That's outside of thunderstorms, and it is still very windy in especially the southwest heading through the night tonight. And that low pressure system also playing with our temperatures a little bit, and around where the rain has fallen only into the mid-teens today in Saskatoon and west central Saskatchewan. But in the sunshine a little bit further south, we're seeing those temperatures get into the mid to even upper 20s, especially the further southeast you go. Now, we'd like this rain to stick around, especially where it's raining right now, but unfortunately this whole system very short-lived. It's going to be moving out as we head through the night tonight. Some showers and pop-up thunderstorms possible in the evening hours before clearing overnight. And then heading into tomorrow, the severe thunderstorm threat drops off basically, but there could be some pop-up showers and storms here and there through the province. And then high pressure moves in as we head into Thursday, which means that we basically have no chance of any rain as we head into the weekend. And as that system begins to move southward tonight, still breezy, especially in southern sections. And even tomorrow, we could see northwest gusts up to around 50 in the south. But then as that high pressure begins to move in, winds going to really diminish heading into Thursday. Now, in terms of what those northwest winds mean for us, it means in terms of smoke, northern Saskatchewan mostly going to be continuing to bear the brunt. Air quality advisory still in place there. Things likely going to get worse before they get better. Could slide southward for the weekend in south and central. Now, the other thing that's happening once this low pressure moves out, we have another traffic jam in our upper atmosphere. This time, this big trough off to our west, out off the coast of BC. But we, this time, are caught under this big, huge ridge which is building. And you see those darker temperatures, that warmer air as we start to slide south of the jet stream. And that means a big warm up is coming. Not necessarily tomorrow. Again, still showery and windy in Regina, but things clearing out, getting close to 30 degrees, and add into the fact that we're going to be feeling very humid as we head through the back of the weekend. Humidex values getting into those mid-30s, those overnight lows, getting well into those mid to upper teens. And then Saskatoon, you see over the next couple of days here, we're quite nice, quite seasonal, but the weekend comes and that warm-up really going to be taking hold. Really no rain coming after this. Overnight lows, Sam, getting so warm that we may need to watch for heat warning criteria. So, you know, if it's not one thing, it seems to be the other.
Oh my goodness, I see the heat and I see the rain at the front. I hope there's rain barrels involved for people because my goodness, it's going to be a dry while.
Yeah, it's going to be a week or two here of that, I think.
Oh boy. All right, we can't win either way, Ethan.
No, we sure can't.
All right, thank you.
You bet.
Oh, this is too much cute. It's the first swim for 11 Humboldt penguin chicks that hatched this year at London Zoo. The debut unfolded under the watchful eye of a nearby zookeeper. It's a preparation for the little ones to get stronger and familiar in the water before they join the zoo's main colony of 76 others of their kind. We'll be back after the break. Welcome back. Thousands of port workers across BC are set to resume strike activity after failing to ratify a tentative deal that was reached through federal mediation. More than 7,400 workers walked off the job July 1st to 13th over issues of automation and the cost of living. The strike had stopped all goods flowing through the BC coast, including Vancouver. A tentative agreement was reached July 13th after terms to end the strike were drawn out by a federal mediator. But it looks like the strike will begin again. The union's internal caucus rejected the tentative agreement and did not ratify it. The union says in a statement that the recommended terms were not sufficient to protect port workers' jobs, quote, now or into the future. Canada's inflation rate has dipped again, falling to 2.8% in June, bringing it back inside the Bank of Canada's target range for the first time in more than 2 years. But as Anis Hadari reports, some things are not moderating.
Rent is definitely inflating at these Calgary apartments, despite heavy construction making life noisier for months.
I was actually going to ask for lower rent. And then when my next lease renewal came up, they had actually increased it. So I was less than happy about it.
Nearly $400 more in monthly rent. Obviously, tenants weren't happy to find out.
Is this for real? I actually didn't believe it when I first got it. I had to read it 3 times to make sure that I was processing what I was reading. I actually was in shock.
But not everything is getting more expensive. Inflation is actually at its lowest level in 2 years. Part of the drop, promotions have made internet and cell service cheaper, and gasoline 21% cheaper compared to last year. But economists point out there are still big problems.
The things that matter the most, unfortunately, like food and shelter costs, rent costs and mortgage interest costs as well, those things are still seeing inflation at extremely elevated levels.
Food is up more than 9%, and rent and mortgage costs are seeing big jumps too as the Bank of Canada increases interest rates. That can fight inflation by discouraging consumer spending, but those effects are slow and not finished yet.
Moving forward, you really do need slower consumer spending, which we're not seeing yet, in order to see further moderations in inflation print. And it's a bit of a question mark, right, as to, when that's going to happen or if that's going to happen.
So they upped your rent by like $400 and it's been like this the whole time? Back in Calgary, Steph Haynes doesn't have a mortgage, but she's feeling those hits.
So those are the things I'm worried about. Rental increases, food going up even more, just affordability of life, honestly. It's already a struggle for me, so.
At a minimum, her rent is 30% higher for at least another year. Anis Hadari, CBC News, Calgary.
And Ethan's back with one last look at your weather.
And as that low pressure system moves out tomorrow morning, we'll still be seeing some cloudy and showery skies in Regina, and still windy too. Those northwest gusts up to 40 in the morning. And we'll see those not really change all that much as we head toward the afternoon. Might not even be at 20 degrees by that point. Chance of a shower or maybe a thunder shower in the afternoon as well. Saskatoon, we're starting under mostly cloudy skies, but winds will be lighter for you. Again, that rain will be done definitely by the time we hit the noon hour, with winds remaining fairly light as well. One animal that certainly has been enjoying the rain are the birds, and especially this blue jay in Susan McDonald's backyard, who not only has found a place to rest, but a place to eat too. I think he needs to chew a little bit more before swallowing that, Sam.
Thanks, Ethan.
You bet.
And that is it for us tonight. For news anytime, you can always head to cbc.ca/sask or /Saskatoon, or subscribe to the CBC Saskatchewan YouTube channel. Ethan and I will be back with more local news and weather tonight at 11. Thanks for watching. Have a great night.